The sun rises over the jagged spine of the East African rift, casting long, bruised shadows across a landscape in the throes of a violent transformation. It is a time of geological upheaval 3.5 million years before the present era, where the Earth itself seems undecided on its future. The lush, unbroken canopy that once stretched from ocean to ocean is tearing apart, shredded by a cooling climate and a drying wind that whispers of extinction. This is the Pliocene epoch, a chapter of history written in dust, drying mud, and the slow, agonizing retreat of the ancient forests. Below the thinning branches, the world is becoming a patchwork of isolated green islands, surrounded by a rising golden ocean of savanna grass. This new vegetation is relentless, a conqueror that thrives in the aridity, choking out the moisture-loving trees and widening the dangerous gaps between the groves. The air is drier here, carrying the scent of parched earth and the distinct metallic smell of distant rain that refuses to fall. For the creatures that dwell in the canopy, this changing horizon is not merely a shift in scenery. It is the closing of a prison door, trapping them in shrinking sanctuaries of wood and leaf. High in the boughs of a grand fig tree, a small troop of primates huddles together against the morning chill, their fur matted with the dew of the Rift Valley. These are not yet men, nor are they fully apes. They are the Australopithecus afarensis caught in the biological purgatory between two worlds. They possess the curved fingers and powerful shoulders of climbers, designed to swing effortlessly through a three-dimensional world of vertical safety. Yet, looking closely at their anatomy, one sees the subtle, treacherous mutations of evolution, a pelvis flared for balance and knees that lock in place, suggesting a destiny that lies not in the branches, but on the terrifying flatness of the ground below. The troop wakes slowly, their dark eyes scanning the forest floor with a genetically ingrained paranoia that has kept their lineage alive for eons. They are small creatures standing barely a meter tall, weighing less than the great cats that prowl the shadows beneath them. In this era, size is the ultimate currency of survival, and these primates are bankrupt. They have no claws to rend flesh, no fangs to tear throats, and no armored hide to deflect a bite. They are soft, fragile bundles of protein in a world dominated by armor, muscle, and predatory perfection. Their only defense is the tree, and the tree is betraying them. Hunger is the silent driver of their day, a constant gnawing presence that forces them to make calculations their primitive brains are only just beginning to understand. The fruit in this grove has been exhausted, picked clean by the troop and the birds that compete for the canopy's bounty. Decades ago, they could have simply swung to the next tree and the next traveling miles without ever touching the soil. But now the canopy is broken. To eat, they must cross the open gaps where the sunlight strikes the earth with punishing intensity. The silence of the morning is heavy, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the low grunts of the elders communicating anxiety. The matriarch of the clan shifts her weight, looking down at the patchwork of sunlight and shadow on the forest floor, calculating the risk of descent. She holds an infant close to her chest, its small fingers gripping her fur with a strength born of instinctual fear. She knows that the ground is the domain of the sudden death, the realm where speed and stealth determine who lives to see the sunset. But the boughs around them are barren, offering nothing but bark and withered leaves. The biological imperative to feed the young overrides the terror of the unknown, forcing a decision that feels like a violation of their nature. Slowly, reluctantly, the troop begins the descent, their movements losing the liquid grace of the canopy and becoming awkward and hesitant. Arms that were wings in the high branches become crutches as they lower themselves down the rough trunk. When their feet finally touch the leaf litter, the sensation is alien. The ground is hard, uneven, and crawling with insects. They do not relax. On the ground, they immediately stand upright on two legs, a posture that lifts their eyes above the tall grass, transforming them from climbers into trembling sentinels. This is the price of bipedalism. It is not a triumphant march, but a desperate attempt to see the enemy before the enemy strikes. The environment at ground level is a sensory assault, vastly different from the filtered green tranquility of the upper canopy. The heat here is immediate and oppressive, radiating up from the soil and down from the unblocked sun. The air buzzes with the sound of flies and the chirping of insects that thrive in the open scrub. Every rustle of the wind through the dry grass sounds like a stalking leopard. Every shadow that shifts looks like the silhouette of a hyena. The troop bunches together a tight knot of anxiety, their eyes darting frantically, their ears twitching at the slightest frequency change in the ambient noise. They move towards the edge of the tree line, peering out into the vast open savanna that separates them from the next grove of fruit-bearing trees. The distance is perhaps only 200 meters, but to them it is an ocean of exposure, a killing field where there is nowhere to hide. The grass is high, golden, and swaying, perfect camouflage for the saber-toothed cats that specialize in ambushing slow-moving prey. The Dinophelis, a predator built for these exact conditions, could be lying flat just meters away, invisible until the moment of impact. The primates make low, nervous vocalizations, seeking reassurance in the proximity of their kin. The first step into the open is an act of immense bravery, driven by the starvation that claws at their stomachs. An adult male takes the lead, stepping away from the shade of the acacia, his body tense, his knuckles white where he clutches a scavenged branch. He is not armed in the modern sense. The branch is not a weapon, but a psychological crutch, an extension of his reach. He walks with a rolling gait, his hips swaying, his short legs pumping to cover the ground. Behind him the others follow a ragged line of refugees fleeing the safety of their ancestral home. As they move further from the trees, the vulnerability of their position becomes terrifyingly absolute. In the canopy, threats came from specific directions, usually below or adjacent, but here on the savanna, death is a 360-degree possibility. They are slow. A sprint for them is a clumsy shuffle compared to the explosive acceleration of the savanna's hunters. If they are spotted now, there is no escape, no branch to catch, no height to sanctuary. They are entirely exposed to the judgment of the wild, tiny, dark specks moving against a canvas of relentless gold. The wind shifts, blowing into their faces, carrying the scents of the plain, the musk of grazing antelopes, the dust of a distant herd, and the faint copper tang of old blood. It also masks their own scent from whatever lies ahead, a small mercy in a merciless environment. They move in silence, stepping carefully to avoid snapping dry twigs, their eyes locked on the horizon where the next cluster of trees promises safety. The sun beats down on their heads, the hair on their shoulders, offering scant protection against the ultraviolet radiation that now defines their existence. Halfway across the clearing, the troop freezes. A sudden disturbance in the grass to their left sends a shockwave of panic through the group. The tall stalks part, revealing not a predator, but a sounder of giant forest hogs, massive prehistoric beasts with tusks like scimitars. The hogs snort and stamp, annoyed but not predatory. The primates do not run. Instinct tells them that flight triggers the chase response in true hunters. Instead, they stand their ground, making themselves look as large as possible, baring their flat herbivorous teeth in a bluff of aggression they cannot back up. The tension holds for a heartbeat, a standoff between the ancient forest dwellers and the brutish foragers of the new epoch. Then the hogs turn and trot away, uninterested in the meager meat of the primates. The troop exhales the adrenaline, leaving their limbs trembling, but there is no time to recover. They must keep moving. The encounter is a stark reminder of their place in the hierarchy. They are neither the masters of this domain nor its primary residents. They are intruders, tolerated only because they are too small to be a threat and too elusive to be an easy meal. They press on their pace, quickening as the safety of the distant trees draws nearer. The physical toll of bipedal walking begins to manifest. Their muscles, still adapting to this new mode of locomotion, burn with exertion. The arch of the foot, a biological spring designed to recycle energy, is being tested on the uneven, rocky terrain. Evolution is a slow sculptor, and it has not yet finished chiseling the perfect walker. Every step is a compromise between the anatomy of the past and the necessity of the present. They are literally walking into their own future, reshaping their bones with every kilometer traversed. Finally, the shadow of the new grove falls over them, a cool, welcoming embrace that signals the end of this terrifying transit. They scramble up the trunks with frantic energy, abandoning their upright posture the moment their hands find the familiar texture of bark. Up in the branches, the relief is palpable. They chatter excitedly, grooming each other with intense focus, their fingers working through the fur to remove the dust of the ground and the stress of the journey. For now, they have survived the horizontal world. They are back in the vertical, where they are masters of their own gravity. But as the sun begins its descent, casting the savanna in hues of blood orange and violet, the matriarch looks out from her high perch. She sees the landscape not as a home, but as a siege line. The patches of forest are getting smaller, the distances between them growing wider with every passing season. The world is drying up and the safe havens are vanishing. The realization is dim but present in her primitive consciousness. The trees will not save them forever. The ground is waiting. The grass is waiting. The time of the canopy is ending, and the time of the endless march is about to begin. The night brings a drop in temperature, the clear sky revealing a cosmos of stars that look down indifferently on the struggling species. The sounds of the Pliocene night begin to rise, the chittering of crickets, the hooting of owls, and the terrifying, bone-chilling roar of a megantherion claiming its territory in the dark. The troop huddles closer, their bodies forming a singular warm mass against the cold universe. They have eaten today, they have survived the crossing, but tomorrow the sun will rise on a world that is slightly less green, slightly more hostile, and demands yet another journey across the killing fields. In this twilight of the arboreal age, the Australopithecus is a species in crisis. They are being evicted from the Garden of Eden, pushed out by the indifferent forces of geology and climate. They are not heroes conquering a new land. They are refugees escaping a collapsing ecosystem. Yet in this forced exile, in this reluctant descent to the earth, the seeds of something greater are being sown. It is in the vulnerability of the open ground that they will find the necessity to stand taller, to look further, and eventually to think deeper. The canopy is vanishing, but the horizon is opening up. The sun climbs to its zenith, hanging suspended in the bleached sky, like a hammer of white-hot iron beating down upon the exposed floor of the Rift Valley. In this era, the midday sun is not a nurturer of life. It is a ruthless interrogator that strips away all shadows and secrets. The temperature soars to levels that warp the air, creating shimmering mirages on the horizon that distort the shapes of acacia trees into dancing ghosts. For the creatures of the savannah, this is the time of the great silence, when the heat forces the living into a state of suspended animation, conserving moisture and energy against the solar assault. Beneath this oppressive glare, the golden ocean of grass stands motionless, a deceptive landscape of beauty that masks a brutal reality. This is the architecture of fear, a world designed by natural selection to favor the unseen and punish the exposed. The grass is tall enough to hide a crouching lion, but too short to conceal a standing hominid, creating a permanent disadvantage for the bipedal wanderers. Every step through this dry, rustling vegetation is a gamble, a venture into a blind zone where death can materialize from a distance of 3 meters. The troop moves through this terrain not with the confidence of owners but with the twitching anxiety of trespassers. The clan is now far from the sanctuary of the morning's grove, foraging in the open scrub where the tubers and termites offer meager sustenance. They are small figures in a landscape of giants, their bodies lacking natural armor or weapons. Evolution has left them naked in a coliseum of fangs. They possess no claws to tear flesh, no thick hide to deflect a bite, and their top speed is laughably slow compared to the sprinters of the plains. They are soft, vulnerable packages of protein kept alive only by a paranoia that has been refined over thousands of generations into a survival art form. Lurking in the peripheral vision of this epoch is the Dinophelis, the terrible cat, a predator perfectly engineered for this transitional world of trees and grass. It is a robust, muscular phantom, heavier than a modern leopard, with elongated canines capable of piercing the skull of a primate in a single surgical strike. It does not roar like the lion. It hunts in a silence so profound that it seems to delete sound from the air around it. The Dinophelis knows the habits of the primates. It knows they are slow, and it knows that eventually they must come down from the trees to drink or feed. The sensory experience of the troop is overwhelmed by the environment. The air is thick with the buzzing of tsetse flies and the drone of cicadas. The smell of the savannah is a complex map of danger. The dry dust, the acrid scent of urine marking territory, and the faint sweet rot of carrion. The hominids rely on their vision, their primary defense, but in the tall grass sight is limited. They must constantly stop, stand tall on their hind legs, and scan the horizon, a behavior that defines their silhouette. This is the Sentinel system, a biological radar where every member of the clan is a watchtower for the others. Standing upright, the alpha male peers over the swaying seed heads, his eyes narrowing against the glare. This posture, which exposes his soft underbelly to attack, is the only way to gain information in a flat world. He is looking for the rhythmic movement that betrays a stalking cat or the sudden flight of birds that signals a disturbance. His brain, small but increasingly wired for pattern recognition, processes the visual data with frantic speed. He is not admiring the view. He is calculating the probability of death. In this moment, bipedalism is not about walking. It is about seeing the enemy before the enemy sees you. Hunger drives them forward, pushing them past the threshold of safety into the territory of the megafauna. The tubers and berries they collect are insufficient to fuel the growing energy demands of their bodies, particularly their expanding brains. They crave fat and protein, the dense caloric packets that are monopolized by the apex predators. They are not hunters, not yet. They are marginal scavengers, the opportunists who wait for the kings of the savannah to finish their meals. They are the beggars of the Pliocene, existing on the scraps left behind by the efficient killers of the age. High above a spiral of vultures marks a coordinate in the sky, a spinning black funnel that signals a recent kill. To the hominids, this is a beacon of hope and terror. It means food is available, but it also means a predator is nearby. The decision to approach is agonizing, a conflict between the fear of the lion and the fear of starvation. The troop communicates with low guttural clicks and gestures, a primitive consensus forming in the heat. They turn towards the vultures, moving with a mix of stealth and purpose, their small hands clutching rocks not to kill but to break. As they draw closer to the sight, the smell of blood becomes a physical presence, heavy and metallic, triggering a primal excitement in their nervous systems. The kill is a young antelope brought down by a cheetah that has already eaten its fill and departed, leaving the carcass to the scavengers. But the cheetah is not the only threat. The savannah is a crowded dining table, and the hominids are late arrivals. They approach in a phalanx, the adults forming a protective perimeter around the younger members, their eyes darting wildly at every shadow cast by the circling birds. They reach the carcass, a mess of torn flesh and scattered entrails baking in the sun. Most of the meat is gone, stripped away by the cheetah's rough tongue and the beaks of the first vultures. But the prize remains the long bones. Within the femurs and humeri of the antelope lies the marrow, a rich, fatty substance that predators cannot reach and birds cannot access. This is the niche of the hominid. With a crude, jagged rock found in a riverbed, the alpha male strikes the thigh bone. Crack. He strikes again. The sound is loud, a dinner bell for any sleeping beast within a kilometer. The bone splinters, revealing the pink, gelatinous treasure inside. Rapidly, the troop descends on the fragments, scooping out the marrow with their fingers, consuming the high-energy fat with desperate urgency. This is the fuel that will power the next leap in evolution, the concentrated energy needed to build a complex brain. For a brief moment, they are triumphant thieves who have stolen a fortune from under the noses of giants. The taste is rich and life-sustaining, a momentary victory against the caloric deficit that defines their existence. But in the wild, no victory goes unnoticed. The wind shifts, carrying a new scent, musky, foul, and terrifyingly strong. The brush crashes open and the true nightmare of the afternoon reveals itself. It is Pachycrocuta, the giant short-faced hyena, a beast the size of a lion with jaws capable of crushing the skull of an elephant. It does not stalk. It arrives with the confidence of a tank, its massive shoulders hunched, its dark eyes fixed on the hominids. It is a creature of pure brute force, a scavenger king that does not ask for the kill, it simply takes it. The hominids freeze their mouths, still slick with marrow. Against this titan their rocks are pebbles, their numbers irrelevant. The hyena lets out a low rumbling growl that vibrates through the ground, a sound that triggers a total evacuation of courage. The troop tries to bluff, screaming and waving their arms, throwing dust into the air to appear larger. It is a pathetic display in the face of such biological perfection. The hyena does not even flinch. It simply steps forward, snapping its jaws with a sound like a gunshot. The message is clear: leave or be eaten. Panic shatters the clan's cohesion. They scatter, dropping the precious bones, fleeing into the tall grass, with the desperate loping run of creatures who know they are outmatched. They do not look back. To look back is to lose momentum. Behind them, the giant hyena claims the prize, its powerful teeth crunching through the remaining bones that the hominids had worked so hard to crack. The hierarchy of the plains is re-established in seconds. The hominids are not the masters of this world. They are merely temporary guests at the feast, tolerated only until the real power arrives. They regroup hundreds of meters away, panting heavily in the shade of a thorny acacia, their hearts hammering against their ribs. The adrenaline crash leaves them trembling, the taste of the stolen marrow now a bitter reminder of their inadequacy. They watch from a distance as the hyena finishes what they started. This is the harsh lesson of the Pliocene. Intelligence and tool use are emerging advantages. but in a direct confrontation with brute force, they are still insufficient. They are smart, but they are physically pathetic compared to the monsters they share the land with. The afternoon wears on, the sun beginning to slide down the western arc of the sky, lengthening the shadows and changing the color of the light from harsh white to a bruised orange. The heat begins to dissipate, but the danger does not. As the temperature drops, the metabolic rate of the savanna rises. The predators who slept through the heat are waking up. The lions stretch, the leopards descend from their trees, and the hunting dogs begin to rally. The killing fields are transitioning from the day shift to the night shift, and the hominids are still on the ground. The troop moves again, driven by the need to find a sleeping site before the true darkness falls. They are exhausted, their bodies battered by the heat and the stress of the near-death encounter. They walk in silence, a solemn procession of survivors. The landscape around them is indifferent to their struggle. The grass waves in the cooling breeze, the birds sing their evening songs, and the cycle of life continues its ruthless rotation. The hominids are a footnote in this ecosystem, a struggling experiment in bipedalism that could easily be wiped out by a single bad season. As they walk, the wind carries the sounds of the coming night, the whoop of a hyena, the distant rumble of thunder. The world feels vast and empty, a terrifying expanse of space where they are the only things that feel fear. They are conscious of their own fragility in a way that the antelope and the zebra are not. They know they are vulnerable. This awareness is their burden, but it is also their greatest weapon. It forces them to plan, to cooperate, to remember. They survive not because they are strong, but because they are afraid. The sun touches the horizon, setting the savanna ablaze with red light. The architecture of fear is closing in. The open spaces that were dangerous by day will become lethal by night. The clan scans the distance for a rocky outcrop or a cluster of trees, any vertical feature that can lift them out of the reach of the prowling cats. They are racing the light, a race they have run every single day of their lives. If they lose, they vanish from history. If they win, they earn the right to do it all again tomorrow. They spot a cluster of basalt rocks jutting out of the plain like the broken teeth of the earth. It is not a perfect fortress, but it is high ground. With the last reserves of their energy, they scramble up the rough stone, pulling the young ones up after them. They settle into the crevices, watching the sun disappear, taking the colors of the world with it. The day of the killing fields is over. The night of the hunter is about to begin. They huddle together, eyes wide, waiting for the first star, waiting for the long dark to swallow them whole. The sun finally surrenders its hold on the horizon, slipping below the rim of the earth, and taking with it the only weapon the hominids possess, their vision. In the Pliocene, the transition from day to night is not merely a shift in illumination. It is a fundamental change in the physics of survival. The vibrant gold and green of the savanna drain away, replaced by a monochrome abyss of charcoal and obsidian. Without the mastery of fire which lies millions of years in the future, the darkness is absolute, a heavy, suffocating blanket that blinds the primates while unveiling the world to their enemies. For the clan huddled on the basalt outcrop, the universe has just shrunk to the immediate radius of their touch and the terrified pounding of their own hearts. The temperature plummets with shocking speed, the desert air losing its heat the moment the solar radiation ceases. The cold is a physical antagonist biting through the thin fur of the Australopithecus, forcing them to knot their bodies together in a desperate geometry of shared warmth. This shivering mass of limbs and torsos is the only furnace they have. They are a single organism of flesh, trying to keep the blood flowing against the indifference of the night air. The wind picks up, whistling through the crevices of the rocks, carrying with it the sounds of a world that has woken up to feed. To the blind hominids, the wind is a carrier of rumors, bringing fragmented auditory data that their brains must decode in a panic. Was that the rustle of grass or the footfall of a beast? Below their precarious perch, the savanna transforms into a different planet. The herbivores, the zebras, the wildebeests, have ceased their grazing and stand in tense, silent vigils, their ears swiveling like radar dishes. But the night belongs to the carnivores. This is the domain of the Meganterion and the Dinophelis, the saber-toothed cats, whose evolution has been dedicated to the conquest of the dark. Their eyes, equipped with the tapetum lucidum, a reflective layer behind the retina, amplify the starlight and moonlight, turning the pitch-black plains into a clearly illuminated hunting ground. To them, the night is not a barrier. It is a cloak of invisibility that allows them to move like smoke through the tall grass. The clan on the rocks is effectively blind. Their eyes, evolved for the bright, sun-drenched canopy of the daylight hours, are useless in this spectral gloom. They stare out into the void, seeing nothing but shifting shapes and terrifying hallucinations born of fear. Every shadow seems to move. Every rock looks like a crouching predator. This sensory deprivation creates a psychological torture that is as exhausting as the physical trek of the day. They cannot sleep deeply. True sleep is a luxury for the apex predator. Instead, they drift into microsleeps, jagged periods of unconsciousness constantly broken by the slightest noise, their muscles twitching in anticipation of a flight they cannot make in the dark. The soundscape of the prehistoric night is a symphony of violence. Far in the distance, the maniacal laughter of hyenas echoes off the canyon walls, a sound that signals a kill has been made. Closer, the deep resonant cough of a leopard soaring through the silence freezes the blood in their veins. These sounds are not just noise, they are information. The hominids listen with an intensity that burns calories, mapping the movement of death across the landscape. They know that silence is often worse than noise. When the crickets stop chirping, when the wind dies down, when the night holds its breath, that is when the stalker is close. That is when the ambush is prepared. Tonight, the moon is a sliver offering scant light to the trembling creatures on the rocks. The darkness is thick, a velvet curtain that hides the approach of two Dinophilis. The cats move with a fluid, terrifying grace, their paws placing silently on the earth, their bodies low to the ground. They do not need to see the hominids to know they are there. They can smell them. The scent of primate musky distinct and smelling of fear drifts down from the rocks, a pheromonal trail leading directly to the buffet. The cats circle the outcrop, testing the perimeter, looking for a route up the jagged stone that will not betray their presence with the clatter of a loose pebble. Up on the ledge, the matriarch wakes with a start. She has heard nothing, seen nothing, yet a primal instinct screams in her brain. The air feels different. The hair on her arms stands erect, a vestigial response to a threat she cannot name. She nudges the male beside her, a silent alarm passing through the huddled group. One by one, eyes open, white sclera flashing in the dim starlight. They stop breathing, listening. The silence stretching out below them is heavy, pregnant with intent. They press themselves flatter against the stone, trying to merge with the geology, praying to the uncaring sky that they are invisible. But they are not invisible. Below them, two pairs of glowing green orbs float in the darkness, fixed on the ledge. The attack, when it comes, is not a battle. It is an explosion of chaos. There is no warning roar, no dramatic challenge. There is only the sound of claws scraping rapidly against stone, a heavy, muscular thud, and then the nightmare is among them. One of the Dinophilis has vaulted up the side of the outcrop, landing in the center of the sleeping cluster. The darkness erupts into screams, high-pitched, frantic shrieks of terror that shatter the peace of the valley. The hominids scatter in a blind panic, stumbling over each other, some nearly falling off the ledge into the abyss below. The cohesion of the clan, their greatest strength, is instantly dissolved by the shock of the assault. The cat is a whirlwind of muscle and teeth, striking out with paws that are heavy enough to break a spine. It does not need to see clearly. It strikes at the heat and the movement. A young adult male slow to wake is caught in the melee. He raises his arms in a futile gesture of defense, but the predator ignores the limb and goes for the neck. The saber teeth serrated biological daggers sink into flesh with a sickening wet crunch. The scream is cut short, replaced by the gurgle of air escaping a punctured windpipe. The violence is efficient, brutal, and blindingly fast. It is the physics of the food chain in its rawest form. The strong consume the weak. The rest of the clan has retreated to the highest, most precarious pinnacles of the rock, clinging to the stone with trembling fingers. They scream down at the darkness, hurling rocks and debris, but it is a gesture of helplessness. They cannot fight this monster. They can only witness. The second cat, waiting at the base of the rocks, growls low, pacing back and forth, cutting off any escape route. The hominids are trapped, forced to listen to the sounds of their kin being consumed. The smell of fresh blood rises, hot and metallic, mixing with the cold night air, a sensory marker that will be etched into their memories forever. The predator on the ledge does not linger. It is vulnerable here, too exposed to larger scavengers that might be attracted by the noise. With a powerful heave of its neck muscles, it lifts the limp body of the hominid and leaps back down into the darkness. The thud of its landing is heavy, followed by the sound of dragging. And then the silence returns. It is not a peaceful silence. It is a hollow, traumatized void. The cats are gone, vanishing into the night as if they were never there, taking a piece of the clan with them. The event has lasted less than 60 seconds, but it has altered the structure of the group forever. The survivors are left in a state of shock, their bodies flooded with cortisol, their hearts beating so hard it hurts their chests. They do not move back to their sleeping spot. It is tainted now, marked by death. They remain perched on the high spikes of rock, shivering violently, not just from the cold, but from the aftermath of adrenaline. They call out softly, wooing into the dark, a roll call of the living. One voice is missing. The realization settles over them like the frost that is beginning to form on the stones. They are one fewer. The night has taken its tithe. For the remainder of the night, no one sleeps. They sit with their knees drawn to their chests, their eyes wide and burning, staring into the impenetrable blackness. Every rustle of the wind sounds like the return of the beast. They are prisoners of the dark, waiting for the rotation of the earth to save them. This is the long dark, the period of time where time itself seems to stretch and distort. They are small, finite beings, trapped in an infinite mystery, keenly aware that they are not the protagonists of this story, but merely potential calories for the true masters of the world. This shared trauma, however, serves a grim evolutionary purpose. It reinforces the absolute necessity of the group. Alone the victim died, together the others survived. The memory of the attack burns a lesson into their neural pathways. Vigilance is life, isolation is death. The fear they feel is the architect of their future society. It is this terror that will eventually drive them to master fire, to create weapons, to banish the night. But that is thousands of generations away. Tonight, they are simply shivering apes, looking at the eastern horizon, pleading with the universe for the return of the sun. As the hours drag on, the constellation of Orion wheels slowly overhead, a silent witness to the carnage. The cold deepens in the pre-dawn hours, the most dangerous time for hypothermia. The clan huddles again, driven by the biological imperative to conserve heat despite the trauma. They press their bodies together, the warmth of the living fighting the chill of the void. They listen to the breathing of their kin, finding comfort in the rhythm of life that persists despite the odds. They are battered, terrified, and grieving, but they are still here. Finally, the sky begins to turn a bruised purple, then a pale grey. The stars fade, retreating before the coming dawn. The shapes of the trees and rocks begin to re-emerge from the shadows, solidifying back into reality. The vision returns. The return of sight brings a wave of relief so profound it is almost physical. The monsters of the mind recede as the landscape becomes knowable again. The sun peaks over the rift, bathing the bloody rock in innocent golden light. They have survived the night. They are alive. But the new day brings a new problem. The water is gone, and the migration must continue. The morning sun reveals a landscape that has been stripped of its color, a monochrome wasteland of grey and white stretching to the jagged horizon. To the north, the great volcanic chimney of Sadiman has erupted, spewing a blanket of fine choking ash that covers the savanna like a shroud of dirty snow. The clan descends from their rocky sanctuary, their feet sinking into the soft, powdery dust, with every step leaving behind deep, distinct impressions. They are leaving the territory of the night hunters, but they are entering a zone of absolute desolation. The local waterholes have been choked by the fallout, turned into undrinkable sludge, forcing the troop to undertake a migration of desperate necessity. They must walk or they will die of thirst in a land that tastes of sulfur and fire. They form a ragged line, a single file of refugees moving across the vast alien surface of the Rift Valley. This is the Great Rift Walk, a journey that will test the very limits of their biological engineering. The ground is treacherous, concealing sharp volcanic rocks beneath the layer of ash, threatening to cut feet and break ankles. The leader sets a steady rhythmic pace, a gait that is unique in the animal kingdom. Unlike the explosive energy-burning sprints of the chimpanzee or the cheetah, this walk is a marvel of efficiency. It is a controlled fall, a pendulum motion where potential energy is exchanged for kinetic energy, allowing the hominid to cover vast distances with minimal caloric expenditure. This relentless upright locomotion is the secret weapon of their species, a subtle superpower that the great predators cannot understand. The lions and hyenas are sprinters built for bursts of extreme power, but plagued by rapid exhaustion and overheating. The hominid, however, is an endurance machine. By standing upright, they expose less of their body surface to the direct punishing rays of the midday sun, while exposing more of their skin to the cooling breeze that flows a meter above the ground. They are the only mammals on the plains that can keep moving when the heat becomes lethal to everything else. They are not outrunning the predator. They are outwalking the sun itself. As the day progresses, the heat rises to a shimmering intensity, distorting the air and baking the moisture out of their bodies. The silence of the march is broken only by the soft crunch, crunch, crunch of their feet in the ash and the labored breathing of the elders. They do not speak. Conversation wastes moisture. They simply walk, placing one foot in front of the other with a robotic determination. The anatomy of their feet is undergoing a live stress test. The arch of the foot acts as a spring, storing and releasing energy, while the non-grasping big toe provides the final push-off. Evolution is reshaping bone and tendon in real-time sculpting, a foot designed not for climbing trees but for conquering continents. In the center of the line, a female struggles under a burden that defines the future of her lineage. She carries an infant not on her back like a baboon, but cradled in her arms, pressed against her chest. This is the revolutionary trade-off of bipedalism. The hands have been freed from the duty of walking. They are no longer just landing gear. They are tools of transport. This mother can carry her genetic legacy across a desert, feeding it, protecting it, and comforting it while moving at a steady 3 kilometers per hour. The bond between mother and child is intensified by this physical closeness, a continuous embrace that will lay the foundation for the complex emotional web of humanity. The landscape they traverse is apocalyptic, a testament to the violent geology that is tearing Africa apart. Smoke plumes rise from distant fissures, and the ground trembles with minor tremors, shaking the dust from their fur. They are walking through a valley that is literally being born, a chaotic cradle of tectonic plates. The ash in the air coats their throats, making every breath a gritty struggle, yet they do not stop. To stop is to surrender to the heat. The collective will of the group pushes them forward, a shared consciousness that understands that the only hope lies beyond the grey horizon, where the smell of rain still lingers in the memory of the wind. By mid-afternoon, the physical toll of the march begins to manifest in the faltering steps of the weakest members. Dehydration is a creeping paralysis, thickening the blood and clouding the mind. Hallucinations dance at the edge of their vision. Rocks appear to be water, and dead trees look like waiting predators. The alpha male pauses, sniffing the air, his parched nostrils searching for the scent of moisture. He detects a faint, muddy dampness, the signature of a riverbed. It is not the clean scent of a running stream, but the heavy organic odor of stagnant pools. It is a signal of survival, but also of extreme danger. They crest a low ridge and look down into the river valley. The water has retreated, leaving behind a wide scarring trench of drying mud and isolated shrinking pools. The banks are steep and slippery, a treacherous descent into a killing zone. The river, once a flowing artery of life, is now a trap. The remaining pools are crowded with desperate animals, antelopes, boars and birds, all risking their lives for a sip of the brown sludge. But the hominids see what lies beneath the surface. The water is still, but it is not empty. The logs floating in the scum are not wood. They are the armored backs of prehistoric crocodiles, the euthycodon waiting for the careless. The thirst is a biological imperative that overrides the fear of the reptile. The clan descends the ridge, sliding down the ash-covered slopes, their eyes locked on the water. They do not rush blindly like the wildebeest. They approach with a tactical caution, spreading out along the bank to maximize their field of view. The mud at the water's edge is deep and sucking, threatening to trap their feet and anchor them for the ambush. The alpha moves first, using a long stick to probe the water, a primitive extension of his sensory reach. He strikes the surface, checking for the violent snap of jaws. The water ripples, but nothing strikes. He kneels, cupping his hands, another triumph of anatomy to bring the water to his lips. The liquid is warm, gritty with silt and tastes of decay, but it is glorious. It floods his system, reactivating his cells, clearing the fog from his brain. The others follow, kneeling in the mud, drinking with frantic gulps, their eyes never closing, watching the surface of the pool. They are vulnerable here, their heads down, their bodies lowered. This is the most dangerous moment of the Great Rift Walk. The crocodile is a patient hunter, capable of holding its breath for an hour, waiting for the shadows to align. Suddenly the water explodes. A massive scaled tail thrashes the surface, sending a spray of mud and water into the air. A set of jaws lined with conical teeth erupts from the sludge, mere inches from a drinking female. She reacts with a reflex speed born of a lifetime of terror, throwing herself backward into the mud. The jaws snap shut on empty air, the sound like two stones colliding. The clan shrieks, scrambling back up the slippery bank, slipping and falling in the panic. The crocodile lunges onto the mud, its short legs churning, but it is a creature of the water, not the land. It cannot pursue them up the slope. They collapse on the top of the bank, safe but terrified, their chests heaving, their limbs coated in grey mud. They have secured the water they needed, but the cost was nearly a life. The encounter serves as a brutal reminder. Even the life-giving elements of this world are guarded by death. They cannot stay here. The riverbed is a magnet for every predator in the valley. They must continue the march. The water has bought them time, perhaps another day of travel, but it has not bought them safety. They pick themselves up the mud, drying on their skin like a second skin, and turn their faces once again to the south. As they walk away, they leave a trail of footprints in the wet volcanic ash that has begun to harden in the sun. These prints, a large male, a smaller female, a child walking in the steps of the elders, capture a moment in time that will one day be read like a book. They show the deep impression of the heel, the distinct arch, the alignment of the toes. They are the signature of a species that has chosen to stand up and walk away from its origins. The ash will bury these tracks, preserving them for millions of years, a silent monument to the day when humanity refused to die in the dust. The sun begins to set on the Rift Valley, painting the ash clouds in violent shades of bruised purple and crimson. The clan is exhausted, their muscles screaming, their feet blistered and raw. But they have covered 20 kilometers of hostile terrain. They have crossed the Valley of Death and are approaching the foothills of the highlands, where the green of true vegetation calls to them. They are not the masters of this world. The crocodile and the volcano have proven that, but they are the masters of their own endurance. They are the travelers, the walkers, the species that solves the problem of survival by simply refusing to stop moving. They find a cluster of boulders near the tree line as the light fades. It is a poor shelter compared to the high trees of the rainforest, but it will have to suffice. They huddle together, the warmth of their bodies, sharing the residual heat of the day. The mother checks her infant, cleaning the ash from its face with gentle fingers. The baby sleeps, unaware of the vast distance it has just traversed. The Great Rift Walk is over for today, but the journey of the species has only just begun. They drift into a restless sleep, their legs twitching, their dreams filled with the endless golden horizon and the rhythm of the march. The sun rises on the fourth day of the migration, but the light that strikes the earth this morning is different. It does not glare off white ash or brown mud. Instead, it is filtered through the vibrant, translucent emerald of leaves. The clan has reached the sanctuary of the lake basin, a geological depression where the groundwater gathers to create a permanent oasis in the heart of a drying continent. The air here is heavy with moisture and the sweet fermenting scent of fallen figs and ripe berries. After the purgatory of the volcanic wasteland, this place assaults their senses with the overwhelming perfume of life. They have walked out of the grey desolation and into a kaleidoscope of green, a temporary paradise earned through the sheer stubbornness of their bipedal stride. They move through the undergrowth with a renewed energy, their bodies no longer tense with the immediate fear of the open plains. The trees here are tall and ancient, their branches interlocking to form a protective ceiling that blocks the view of the predatory sky. For the Australopithecus, this return to the canopy is a spiritual homecoming, a reconnection with the vertical world of their ancestors. They climb with the clumsy enthusiasm of exiles, returning to a motherland, their hands gripping the rough bark, their feet finding purchase on the thick boughs. High above the ground, safe from the leopards and the hyenas, they can finally exhale. The stress hormones that have flooded their systems for days begin to recede, replaced by the chemical calm of safety. But they are not the same creatures that left the dying grove days ago. The journey has changed, them etched into their neural pathways by the acid of trauma and survival. They have seen the world outside the garden and they have survived it. Now in the safety of the oasis, the true work of the species begins. It is not the work of hunting or gathering, but the work of bonding. The clan gathers on a wide, flat rock near the water's edge, forming a tight, intimate circle. They begin the ritual of grooming a behavior that is the social glue of the primate world. Fingers comb through matted fur, picking out ticks, dried mud, and the burrs of the savanna grass. This grooming is far more than hygiene. It is the primitive internet of the Pliocene, a complex network of tactile communication that reinforces hierarchy, resolves conflicts, and builds alliances. The rhythmic stroking releases oxytocin in their brains, a powerful neuropeptide that fosters trust and reduces anxiety. In a world where every shadow holds a death sentence, trust is the only currency that matters. If I groom you, you will watch my back. If I comfort you, you will share your food. This is the biological foundation of society. The invisible architecture that allows a group of weak individuals to function as a single formidable organism. They are weaving a safety net out of touch and sensation. As they interact, a subtle but revolutionary feature of their anatomy becomes apparent: the eyes. Unlike the chimps and the great apes of the deep forest whose eyes are dark and obscured, these hominids possess a visible white sclera surrounding the iris. This high-contrast design allows them to track the gaze of their kin with precision. They can see where another is looking without moving their heads. It creates a theory of mind, a silent language of intention. A widened eye signals fear. A narrowed eye signals aggression. A glance to the side signals a hidden resource. They are reading each other's minds through the windows of their faces, developing an empathy that is unique in the animal kingdom. On the periphery of the group, the alpha male engages in an act that foreshadows the dominion of man. He is not grooming, he is working. He holds a large, smooth stone in his hand, a river cobble, heavy and dense. He is not shaping it that technology is still 1,000,000 years away, but he is using it. He places a hard-shelled nut on a flat anvil rock and brings the hammerstone down with calculated force. Crack! The shell shatters, revealing the nutritious meat inside. He repeats the motion. This is the dawn of the tool age. The stone is no longer just part of the landscape, it is an extension of his will, a prosthetic hardener that allows his soft hand to deliver a blow of impossible force. This simple action represents a cognitive leap of staggering proportions. The hominid has looked at an object and imagined a function that does not yet exist. He has imposed his mental blueprint onto the physical world. Today it is a stone to crack a nut. Tomorrow it will be a flake to slice meat. Eventually it will be a spear, a plow, a silicon chip. The logic is identical. The environment is not a fixed reality, but a toolbox waiting to be unlocked by the mind. The other members of the clan watch him, their mirror neurons firing, downloading the software of this new behavior. Learning is no longer just genetic, it is cultural. They are becoming teachers and students. Near the center of the circle, the mother nurses the infant who survived the Great Rift Walk. The child is helpless, a bundle of uncoordinated limbs and demanding cries. This helplessness is the price of their brilliance. To walk upright, the female pelvis had to narrow. To be smart, the fetal brain had to grow. The result is a biological compromise. The hominid child must be born prematurely to fit through the birth canal, entering the world with a brain that is only a quarter developed. This secondary altriciality means the child requires years of intensive care, a burden no single mother can bear alone. The tribe must exist to raise the child. This fragility is the greatest strength of the species. Because the child is born unfinished, its brain is not hardwired by instinct, but is soft plastic and eager to be programmed by experience. It soaks up the language of the eyes, the rhythm of the walk, the technique of the stone. It learns to love, to fear, and to cooperate. The long childhood creates a long window for social learning, transmitting the collective wisdom of the clan to the next generation. The baby staring up at the canopy is not just an animal. It is a sponge for culture, a vessel for the accumulated knowledge of the tribe. The weakness of the individual forces the strength of the society. The afternoon light begins to fade, casting long golden beams through the steam rising from the lake. The clan moves to the edge of the ridge, looking out over the valley they have conquered. They are small, dirty, and scarred. Their numbers are few, perhaps 20 individuals standing against a continent of millions of predators. To the indifference of the universe, they should be extinct. They are too slow, too weak, too tasty. And yet they are here. They have survived the vanishing canopy, the killing fields, the long dark, and the march of fire. They have cheated death, not by overpowering it, but by outlasting it. They stand on two legs, a posture that frees their hands to hold the world and lifts their eyes to scan the horizon. This upright stance has done more than just move them across the ground. It has changed their perspective. They no longer look only at the dirt in front of them. They look at the distance, at the future. They are the first creatures to perceive time not as a circle of seasons, but as a line of progression. They are beginning to understand cause and effect, planning for the waterhole that is 3 days away, remembering the predator that hides in the tall grass. They are becoming the archivists of their own survival. The wind blows through the trees, carrying the spores of the future. These creatures do not know that they are the ancestors of a species that will one day split the atom and walk on the moon. They do not know that their struggle is the opening chapter of a saga that will dominate the planet. They only know that they are hungry, they are tired, and they are together. They know that when the sun goes down, the monsters will come, but this time they will be watching with 20 pairs of eyes instead of 2. They have unlocked the secret of the superorganism. They are no longer a loose collection of apes. They are a people. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in the familiar bruised colors of the Pliocene twilight, the alpha male lets out a low, resonant call. It is not a scream of fear nor a bark of aggression. It is a location marker, a sound that says, "We are here." The others answer a chorus of voices rising into the cooling air, defying the silence of the coming night. The sound echoes off the water, bouncing against the rocks, announcing to the darkness that the fire of consciousness has been lit and it will not be easily extinguished. The camera pulls back, rising high above the oasis, leaving the small figures behind. It ascends through the canopy, breaking into the open sky, looking down at the vast, sprawling geography of East Africa. The Rift Valley stretches out like a scar on the face of the world, a crucible of heat and dust, where the metal of humanity is being forged. The timeline accelerates. The green islands will shrink further. The ice ages will come. The volcanoes will roar. But the walkers will keep walking. They will spread out from this valley, crossing deserts, mountains, and oceans, carrying the stone and the fire to every corner of the globe. But for now, 3.5 million years ago, they are simply a flicker in the dark, a fragile probability in a universe of entropy. The night settles in absolute and cold. The stars emerge, the same stars that will guide their descendants across the seas. Down in the dark, huddled against the roots of a great tree, the clan sleeps. They dream of fruit, of water, and of the sun. They are the survivors of the golden grass. They are the prey that refuse to die, and in their refusal they have inherited the earth.